He's obviously been one of the better run producers and bats over the last 7 or 8 years in the National League. We had a chance to talk to him before when he got released from the Phillies, and just very clear with him about role, expectation, opportunity. And I think for us, he's coming in, opportunity to compete, hopefully earn a lot, earn his playing time. He understands that. I think we look at him, left field, right field, and we're going to give him an opportunity at first base as well, and continue to try to lengthen our lineup. I think the last few days, talked about it a few days ago at the start of camp, had more work to do in terms of continuing to bolster the starting rotation, add depth, add quality. Obviously still finalizing a couple of those deals with Marquez and Canning, but feel like have a chance there to kind of round out our staff, and we know we've got to continue to add innings, and similar to some of the deals from the last few years, you get to this point in time in the season, there's still a lot of good players out there, so we continue having conversations and talking, both on the trade and free agent market, continue trying to add to the club. Expect to probably add a few more guys here in the next couple of days, non-roster, roster. But again, all about the pursuit of trying to round out our team. It's not, off-season doesn't end with the winter meetings. The off-season really, and the roster build really throughout the whole season and throughout spring training. So we're excited by the last couple of days, and hopefully some guys that have some things to prove, fit within our budget, and some players have been accomplished, but understand that they wanted to be here as well. So throw it out to the questions.
What made you comfortable with Nick bringing him here?
We did a lot of homework. I think, obviously, throughout the whole offseason, there was a lot of talk that the Phillies were looking to move him. Probably wasn't going to factor in for the Phillies this year. So just trying to make sure, get a grasp of exactly what happened in the situation. So talked to a ton of people that have history with Nick, teammates, coaches, people that have been around him, and then I think myself, Craig, Josh Stein getting on a Zoom call with him and with Gene Motto, his agent, and he was just super forthright about the whole, the last year in Philly, the incident that was written about. Again, we talk about it all the time, I make many mistakes in this job, but ultimately when people own up to those mistakes, and he did that in our call, and it's about giving guys another opportunity, and he gets a fresh start here and a fresh opportunity.
What does that fresh start do for a guy like that has the talent and has done what he's done?
Hopefully gets him to hit about 290 with 20. No, I think it's always exciting when you get a chance to see new faces, some old faces for him too. Obviously, growing up with Manny never hurts, and those guys growing up together, and Manny knowing what Nick's all about. But he's been on some of the best teams in baseball over his career. When you talk about the Tigers, I think the Cubs in that playoff race when he came back and played really well, and then obviously last year's in Philly, it's one of the best organizations, one of the best teams. So I think for Nick, kind of continuing to be on a winning team, that was important to him. But a fresh start's always, it's always a good thing, and hopefully we get a very motivated player.
What makes you confident Marquez can take another step? He hasn't been great since he came back from the TJ.
Yeah, again, I think a little bit of getting out of Colorado. We've seen that with other pitchers in the past. Jordan Lyles, Jake McGee, some guys like that have gone elsewhere, and just the conditions of pitching in altitude and cores. We've seen it firsthand over the years. He was one of the better starters in the league a few years ago. So Tommy John, some health stuff. Hopefully our medical team, they've shown a track record. Mark Rogo, his staff does a great job. Ruben, big part of his program. Keeping guys on the mound and what that looks like. A lot of faith in our pitching group, and Buddy Black being here as well. He had firsthand knowledge of Marquez. And another guy in the off season, Spencer Graham, one of our pro scouts, went over, met with him 2 or 3 times, watched him work out, watched him throw. Another guy has something to prove. So I think trying to check our boxes, doing our homework, I think we feel like that puts the odds in your favor a little bit to hopefully make some good decisions, but that was part of our process with him.
What's your clarity on Canning and when he will be ready to get on the mound in the game for the Padres?
Yeah, we've seen him throw now multiple times in the last few weeks, and the velocity's been good. He's got to still check some boxes, running, fielding his position, continuing that rehab process. It sounds like it's usually in that 11, 12-month kind of deal for an Achilles. Another guy getting in here, getting through the physical process. I think we'll have a better sense. But he's pitching. It's like it's kind of like rounding that out, what the schedule looks like for him to be able to do some of the other things from a fielding standpoint, bounce back. Some of the running conditioning component that we've got to continue to add to him. When we signed him, we didn't want to. We talked about it's not about, hey, you're definitely a 60-day candidate. Let's come in here. Let's our medical team be able to evaluate a little bit more. I think that's still the program here for the next few days.
Even in the draft, you're an organization that's really not shied away from guys who have had injury history, Tommy Johns, things like that. What is it about the program that you have here that makes you confident that guys can come back from situations like that?
I mean, obviously it starts with content. We have some, again, with Mark Rojo's done this a long time, and his team does a great job. And then it's communication. I think the way Ruben, Ben Fritz, Peter Somerville, the communication both internally. We take a lot of pride in medical, talking to the pitching group, talking to the SNC staff. Again, it probably seems like common sense, but it's just trying to really make sure that process is good between players, staff. Those daily communications, I think that's helped, and then you have some experts that are really good at kind of diagnosing and then keeping guys on the field. And from Ruben and the mechanical side of things, with the lab, I think we've done a good job there also. So again, not just one area, but how all that dynamic works. It gives us some faith that we can take, I don't know about risk, but we take some shots with some guys coming back from injury and hopefully have some upside, on that standpoint.
How much did you talk to the Phillies about a potential trade before Nick was released?
Yeah, we talked to him a lot, honestly. So he was a guy that, again, we knew we wanted to add to the lineup. He was a guy we knew the acquisition cost was not going to be super high with some potential upside. So had a lot of conversation. Ultimately, we didn't line up on the deal and didn't know how it was going to play out. But they end up doing what they did from a release, and that led to our conversations with him after the release.
What did you know about the incident in Miami before it all kind of came out the other day?
I didn't, honestly. For me, I think it was more about like the clubhouse dynamic, kind of what his kind of getting more information about work ethic and love of the game and what kind of teammate. Those were more of the questions. So when we saw that specifically, that was obviously a question that we talked to Nick about personally, and that's the best thing, is just talk to somebody directly, and obviously. Again, everyone's got their side of the story. I think, again, like the media does a good job of reporting these things. But I think for us, it was most importantly about getting face to face with him or Zoom to Zoom with him, hearing his thoughts, and kind of then making a decision as a group. Myself, Eric Grubner, John Seidler. Again, just talking about it, and ultimately felt good with the decision.
Did you talk to kind of the leaders in the clubhouse, some of your more veteran players, before deciding to do this?
Yeah, I mean, talk to some players for sure. Just getting their take, and again, we have I think again, like the city of San Diego sees it all the time. These guys like each other. They create a good vibe in there. We've done a lot of winning over the last 5 or 6 years. And a big part of that is that clubhouse culture, and it's like a welcoming culture. We've got a diverse group in there. We talk about it all the time from a scouting standpoint, and when we put together teams, it's not about personality. Everybody's got different personalities, but the people that love baseball, love to win, love to compete, want to work, and want to, again, like accept people for who they are. Like, say it, yeah. We're going to make mistakes. You got to own up to them. I mean, that's what we see every day in our clubhouse. I mean, you guys cover it, you see it. It's a good place where people want to be. And I think in this process, the last few days, you get to this point in time, and it's not necessarily about money for a lot of these players now. I mean, these are lower dollar acquisitions, but I mean, it's a credit to the players. Like, even some of the players we haven't signed over the last few weeks, sending texts talking about, heard about San Diego, first class organization. Players are talking about it. Other teams are talking about it. The fans of San Diego people talk about the atmosphere. That's all been part of this process the last few weeks of some of these lower dollar kind of conversations we've had.
Manny said he couldn't figure out why you hadn't been extended yet, said you were the best in the business. Is it nice to have the backing of your star players as you go through these negotiations?
Yeah, you give out a $300 million contract and usually get those kind of comments. So, again, I think I can only say I think the players in that clubhouse, they know, they know that we're trying to win. I think there's a respect for the front office, for our organization, So we've been through a lot together, like a bunch of those core players. I think it's what it's what we set out to do, 10 years ago. And like talking to Peter Seidler all the time, like the vision that we had was about getting players that the fans of San Diego know, hey, there's going to be some ups and downs. It's not perfect. But every year that these group of 5, 6, 7 of your core players are going to be there. You can pay to watch them play, and I think our players feel that. So I think they take pride in that, and I think that's all part of the dynamic we've created here.
Anything new though to report on that front to appease Manny?
No, again, like what we talked about a few days ago. It's obviously we've been busy the last few days, so I think the focus on the field. Day one spring training with full squad today. That's been a huge part of it. I think again wanting to be here, continue to talk to John and hoping and looking that we're going to work something out. That's the idea, and nothing's changed on that front.
The rotation. Assume best case scenario, McKenzie, Gonzalez, Canning, Marquez all get back to the best version of themselves. You don't have enough room for all of them in the rotation. Is there an avenue to keep everyone in the organization at that point?
Yeah, I mean, again, like that's what the next 6-8 weeks is going to be about. Like the players, we've talked to them all, and we'll continue to talk as we go through the next couple of weeks. But there's no promises to anybody. Obviously we got some guys that are out of options. We've got some guys that are on big league deals. We got some guys on non-roster. It's going to be competition, so we're going to find out, what's the best mix for us. Over the next 6-8 weeks, it's probably. I think we're hoping that there's not enough spots and that these guys make it really tough for us. But I think we all been in baseball a long time. You kind of see, especially on the pitching front, when you think you have you have too much pitching or you have too few spots. That's usually not the case. So that's why we continue to be active in that front and try to add some quality depth.
And were you ever close to trading for Castellanos, or just kind of took the gamble that he'd get released?
We had a lot of conversation with the Phillies. I think ultimately, we didn't line up on a deal, but there was conversation. I thought, it wasn't sure if it was going to happen, not happen. When we didn't get to a deal, wasn't sure what that all meant when he was put on waivers. Then we made a decision, let's go talk to him, let's have that conversation, and then we were able to line up after that. But we did have we had trade talk for sure.
All winter?
We talked to him for, a few months now for sure, dating back to, again, it wasn't a secret that, he's somebody that was on the market and probably wasn't going back to Philly, so we started in, November, December on that front.
With today being the first full workout, did you address the team or was it somebody from the ownership group?
No, Craig Salmon addressed the team, so I think Eric and John in that meeting, and but I think again, pretty much like business as usual for us in terms of the way it's worked over the years. There'll be times where people from the business and marketing side, they'll have their day to talk to the team about about the ways that they really support our whole organization. But today's Craig's day. As first day, for your manager to set the tone. It's important for him. It's cool to see him up there. I think and addressing the team. But again, from our standpoint, it's put a good team on the field, a talented team. We're trying to continue building on that front, but the transition now to hey Craig, these are our players, your players, and go lead it with the staff. I think that kind of starts with the first day today with Craig making that address.
I know you, Darvish, is in Japan. Have you gotten any closer to resolution on his situation?
No, I think just kind of letting him enjoy his experience for right now. He's we continue to talk and are aware he's going to be coming to here in Peoria after he does what he needs to do to kind of continue that experience that he had 3 years ago. So I think kind of letting him do that, it's important for him. It's important for Team Japan that he's there, letting him enjoy that experience, and we'll talk more when he comes back.
For months about what could happen soon, but do you expect your budget will be the same no matter what you guys ultimately work out?
Yeah, it's something again it didn't the Darvish situation. We've had a lot of consistent conversations, so it's nothing that surprised us really in terms of where we're at. I think from a budget standpoint, we've been pretty consistent all off season. I think these signings the last few days, about trying to get value within that budget. We're always gonna look and see if there's opportunity that's out there, but we've had a pretty set budget here for most of the off season. I don't think anything's really going to affect that too much.